Hey everybody! Welcome to this mini movie review. This time I did something a little different. I went on the new Twitter handle at GEK Podcast, and I put out a poll with a couple movies on it, and the movie that won for this one is 2015's The Devil's Candy. So that's what I'm getting ready to watch here. According to IMDb, the synopsis for this is: a struggling painter is possessed by satanic forces after he and his family move into their dream home. Isn't that always the way? You always think it's like, in all these movies, it's like they end up acquiring a home from a long-lost relative, or they get a really good deal on a home and that's huge and gorgeous, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, it's just perfect. And then they like leave their job and quit everything, and so then when they get here and it's all messed up and possessed or haunted or whatever, they're like, well, we can't leave because I don't have anything back in wherever we came from. So we'll see how this one's going to go. It's got some decent, I think it had a decent response, you know. Seems like it might be pretty good. It's a little short of a movie, so here, I'll get into a little bit of it. Alright, this is off of Wikipedia here a little bit. The Devil's Candy is, again, like I said, from 2015. It's an American horror film. It was written and directed by Sean Byrne. I believe he also did The Loved Ones in 2009, so that's another movie he did. This film stars Ethan Embry, Sherry Appleby, Kiera Glasgow, Pruitt Taylor Vince, Greg Nye, and Marco Perella. It was released by IFC Midnight on March 17th, 2017. I've had this movie in my queue for a little bit in Netflix, and so I mean, it was released for the Toronto International Film Festival back in 2015, before it was released, to the United States 2 years later, about a year and a half. According to Wikipedia, the running time is 90 minutes for the festival cut, and then the theatrical cut is only 79 minutes. So this movie is only 79 minutes. So I'm hoping for some crazy stuff, if they can throw everything in there in a short amount of time. Sometimes those types of movies are pretty fun, where it's just like a whirlwind. You're like, what? When you get out of it. So hopefully it'll be something like that. We'll see. I don't want to look too much into the plot or anything, but it looks like your typical run-of-the-mill possessed house. So I'm going to go take a look at it here and give it a watch, and I'll come back and let you know what I think. Okay, and I'm back. Alright, let's get into it. I'll do a brief synopsis of it, so there will be some spoilers and stuff if you haven't seen it yet. So here we go for 2015's The Devil's Candy. So I was right, in a way they acquired this house because it was cheap because some stuff went down. There's this guy played by Pruitt Taylor Vince. He did a really good job. But the thing about this movie that I thought was kind of interesting is they definitely try to tie in Satan with heavy metal and all this imagery and stuff like that. It starts out with this guy, and his name is Ray. He can't sleep, and he gets up out of bed, and he starts standing in front of this cross in the bedroom and playing this Gibson Flying V guitar on a Marshall amp. And I say that because it comes up later. He just keeps playing the same chord over and over, really, really loud. And at the time, I didn't realize who this was. I thought it was his wife. But this woman comes in, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, if I do it loud enough, I can't hear it. And so a lot of this movie is, you can hear, little voices and stuff saying the same thing kind of over and over. Different words. It's probably in Latin or something. The woman's like, oh my gosh, you need to go back to the hospital. I'm going to call the doctor to come get you and take you to the hospital. And then he gets upset because she unplugs the music, and she goes to leave, and he comes up behind her, or she ends up falling down the stairs, and then I think he hits her with the guitar. A man comes in too, and then I think he beats him to death with the guitar. So and then it cuts to a pretty short time later, actually. You're not really quite sure what happened there. For a second, I thought the guy coming in was the doctor or something. It happened really quick, so I wasn't sure. Later, you find out more about it, which I'll get to, and it's kind of interesting. So then it cuts to Ethan Embry's character, and he's He's kind of got this like nasty hair, like he needs to bathe, and then he's got like this real muscular body looking like Iggy Pop running around, and he's an artist, and he loves metal, and that's all he likes to do is rock out to metal and throwing up horns and stuff like that. He's listening to the music really loud, and he's painting this huge like backdrop on like this tarp thing, and it's got like some butterflies, but it's still kind of dark looking. I didn't think it looked bad. He didn't like doing it, but he has to do work for commission because he needs the money and he's an artist. And so the daughter heads out there. He's got a daughter. Her name's Zoe. She's a little metalhead just like him, which I thought was cute. The family at first didn't really seem like they fit, because the mom is like a lot more straight-laced than they are. I have a feeling like back in the day when maybe they were dating, like she was a little more hardcore, but she kind of had to grow up a little bit, you know? So they kind of don't feel like they fit, but I mean, they seem like they have a good time as a family. Is just kind of different. So it's like, you know, I could tell the daughter, like, I liked her. She did a good job. The girl playing the daughter, she's probably like 13 or so. And she just, I thought she was good too. Her and then the main guy, Ray, the big guy, doing all the killing and stuff, I thought they both did a pretty good job. But, like, you can kind of tell maybe that she's into some of it just because she wants to hang out with her dad, which is fine. It was cute. You know, her and her dad were very close. So the mom comes up and she's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? We're running late. You haven't even showered, which he's just, like, filthy the whole movie. And at first I wasn't sure what they were doing, but they were going to go check out this big house, which is the same house from the beginning. And I'm not sure why they want, I guess because they just want, like, a change of scenery, and he wants a bigger studio because he was painting in the garage and it's not super big. And so they go over there and they're talking to the realtor guy, and it's kind of out in the country. They go into this room that's got like little teddy bears and stuff in it. And it's going to be the daughter's room. And of course she hates that. So she wants to put up a bunch of her metal posters. That was also the room where Ray kind of went crazy and was playing his guitar. So it really hasn't been that much time later. I assume that Ray was dead, but he's not. On that wall, in the beginning, there was a cross, and of course when everything went down, the cross flipped upside down, and so that left like a little like dusty imprint of where that cross was. They didn't really notice it when they were in the room at the time. I'm not sure why. It kind of stands out, but it's there. So they head out to go check out the big barn area, and so that's going to be the dad's studio, Ethan Embry. So that's when the realtor's like, well, you know, there is a reason the price is, you know, I have to tell you about the death in the family. And he says a older woman fell down the stairs and the husband couldn't deal with it, and then he killed himself. And they were like, oh, well, that's horrible, but, you know, that's not so bad, you know, whatever. Which isn't quite the truth. And so they decide to get the house. It's a lot of big stuff. Like, Zoe's got to change schools. They only have one car. It's like the station wagon thing. The wife has to take 2 buses to get to her job at the salon. I don't understand, like, why they had to move so far out in all this, that they couldn't have found it anywhere else. It just didn't seem like there was much of a reason, and that he was kind of dragging it out there, and they weren't too bummed about it, but it just didn't seem very practical. At this time, you realize that Ray's still alive, and he's still hearing voices, and he checks into this hotel, and he's, like, really just kind of out of it, and he checks in the hotel, and he starts playing the guitar there, and the cops get called, and so this cop shows up, and he's like, you know, you need to be quiet, and he's like, all right, I'll be quiet. So then it cuts back to the family, and they're settling into the house. Ethan Embry, his character's name is Jesse, and Jesse starts hearing the same kind of whispers that Ray was hearing. So while he's hearing these voices, he goes up into the daughter's bedroom, and he starts pulling away her posters, and he sees that cross, and I'm like, I don't know how they didn't see it before, but he kind of gets inspired, or in a way kind of possessed, and he goes back and he makes this picture of the cross upside down, and he kind of zones out, and he comes back and he's like, I don't remember doing this painting at all. And it's pretty good looking. He goes to this art gallery who turned away his portfolio recently because he really feels like he has something good. The gallery's name is Belial. I was like, cute. That's a nod towards the devil in like Jewish and Christian text eventually. Because even the art gallery people were kind of like weird. I'm like, are they the devil? I don't know. So the receptionist looks at the scan of the painting of the cross and she likes it. So later, like one of the evenings later, Ray, who lived in this house apparently, comes back and knocks on the door. And this part kind of bugged me because the daughter, who's like 13, answers it and just starts talking to him like nonchalantly. She calls for her parents, but then she's also like, hey, what's up? You know, and then he kind of gets a moment of clarity because he's kind of out of it from being demon possessed or whatever, but he gets a moment of clarity and sees that she has like a fake tattoo of a flying V, and he's like, oh, I have one of those and stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, I always wanted one. My parents are going to get me one, but, you know, not a Gibson Flying V or anything, like, it's too expensive. he wants to enter the house because he says like his mommy and daddy live there and he needs to come home. And then that's when they realize, they're like, oh, that was his parents. And that's when I was like, oh, it was his parents, because I was thinking that was like his wife and again like the doctor. So I was like, okay, so those are his parents. So he tries to come in and Jesse pushes him out, which again, this is another part, because then after that the daughter's like, you were really mean to him. And even the wife's like, yeah. And it's like, no, he was he's not, no. He threatens to call the cops on Ray. Ray leaves. So he's like, okay. So the next morning, they go to leave to school. I think this is like her second day at the new school. And, she's got really cute clothes. She does like this kind of like punk, metal-y kind of thing. Like she likes Metallica a lot, and she'll wear like leggings that are ripped up. And, it's cute, But she looks different. And she got like purplish hair. And so, school's not super great for her. They go to leave the next day. Like she's kind of starting to fake like she doesn't feel good. But then she goes to leave and she notices that the Red Gibson and a Marshall amp are sitting at the end of the gate. And she's like, oh my gosh, he left me his guitar. And I'm like, don't take it. Don't take it. She turns to her dad and she's like, can I have it? And he's like, no, you can't have it. I'm like, thank you. No, you cannot have it. So he takes her to school and drops her off. Cut back to Ray. Kind of keeps going back and forth. He shows up outside of this, like, not really a playground, but it's a secluded area. There's some kids there. He shows up with a rock, bashes the one kid over the head, and this is kind of a gruesome scene because the kid's like swinging, and it was done pretty well. Takes that kid who's still kind of alive, like twitching and making noise, back to the hotel where he puts on like this trash bag thing. He cuts him into little pieces and he puts the kid in some luggage, like the rolly wheels and stuff. So you're like, geez, all right. And so he puts him up and then he buries him in a hole that's already filled with other suitcases. During this, Jesse has been kind of possessed again, and he goes back and starts painting some of the kids, including his own daughter, who's like on fire in this picture, and he paints over all the butterfly thing he was doing for the bank, which kind of doesn't really come back to play. Like, no one gets mad about that. It looks kind of neat. Eventually, what he ends up with is pretty, it's pretty bitchin', but it's like, his wife wasn't like, oh crap, you ruined your picture. She was just like, this is horrible. That's our daughter. But he kind of still doesn't remember doing it. He's like, there's just these kids inside of me that they want out and I have to draw them. And she's like, you're freaking me out. He ends up losing track of time. And so it's like the second day of school and he forgets. He goes to leave and it's dark. And he realizes he forgot to pick up Zoe. And so the poor thing's sitting there and she's super mad. She eventually uses the guilt off of that to get to keep the guitar and the amp. And I'm like, all right, I see what you did, girl. That night, or like the next night, I think it's that night, he gets done like burying this kid in whatever location. Ray does, is who I'm talking about, sorry. He still had a key to the house that they now live in because they didn't change the locks. And this part's kind of freaky because poor Zoe is like 13 and she's sleeping in her bed and it's like a queen or something. And Ray, who's kind of a big guy who probably smells horrible, he's been like in the same red jumpsuit this whole time, goes to sneak in and he lays down next to her and he starts like looking at her like he's gonna go to sleep. And he starts like talking and I was like, oh my gosh, the poor thing. Like, he's just laying in bed with her in the middle of the night, talking about how the devil wanted him to take her, but he didn't want to, so he picked someone else, and he was trying to protect her. And she wakes up and she starts screaming, and he's like, don't scream. If you scream, it's best if you're quiet, and stuff. And so she screams. At this time, Jesse is now, like, outside in, like, his underwear painting again. And so she's screaming, and Astrid comes running in and hits him, and he gets out, and he ends up kicking Jesse in the face because he comes back to fight him. It's like this whole thing. So it's like, the cops come, and they're like, we need to change the locks. You guys should probably go stay in a hotel for a couple of days. And, Zoe's pretty shaken up, which, as she should be. So the next day, Zoe wants to go to school. And they're like, you don't have to go to school after what happened last night. She's like, no, I feel safe there. And they're like, oh, crap. Because, like, she's upset. And so they drop her off at school, and Jesse gets a call from this Belial company, and the guy wants to come take a look at it today at, like, 2 o'clock, and he's like, okay, fine. So they don't quite get to the hotel yet. So Leonard comes, the guy from Belial. He likes the stuff, Jesse cuts the meeting short to go get Zoe, but on the way, he gets, like, this tire. This part was kind of dumb, too. This tire rips like it's bad, and he swerves all up in the road, and there's this white car behind him that instead of slowing down is, like, trying to get around him, even though he's swerving through both lanes of traffic. I'm like, just slow down a second and let him like, what are you doing? I mean, he makes it around him, but I'm like, come on. So then he's like, crap, because their car's not that great anyway, and now he's really going to be late, and he just starts, like, running to go to the school. He runs all the way to the school, he gets there, and Zoe's not there. This is where the movie kind of starts to get a little better, kind of amps up a little. Poor thing, she's back at the hotel room. Ray has her completely duct taped and around her mouth, and she comes to. She's got a head wound. He really likes to use rocks to hit people in the head. she ends up getting out. Smart girl. She, rips through the stuff. She gets out the window. She runs to the police. Great. She makes it out. Now she's really terrified. I'm like, geez, this girl's never going to leave her parents' side and, like, be scared to death of everything. Like, before this, Ray is telling Zoe that she's, like, the sweetest candy, that the devil likes to eat children. So, basically, the devil's candy is children. And he's been having to feed the devil children, because it's the sweetest candy, and the devil likes it. He says it's something he doesn't want to do, but he's compelled to do it. Because you find out here at the police station that this guy, Ray, when he was 12 years old, he took a rock, and he bashed in this 9-year-old's head and was burying the body and said that the devil made him do it. And so he went off for 20 years to an institution and then came back out and lived with his parents, which I guess that would imply that he was like in his mid-30s, but he obviously was not. Like, this guy's 50. So I guess he lived with his parents for some time and then maybe had some issues back and forth. I don't know. So that's what it was. Like, those were his parents. He lived there. So that's what happened. So this Ray guy has been going through this since he was 12 years old. So part of you's like, maybe it's a mental thing, but it's like the fact that Jesse hears it too, it's, it's something. So now they're like, we're going to put you in witness protection. So now it's 2 officers, and they're like out there at the house letting the family get all their stuff together. And all of a sudden you hear the female cop screaming. And you're like, oh, snap. And this stuff here is pretty good too. Ray has basically driven his car into the cop. He's got the female cop squeezed in between the 2 cars. The other male cop's like crawling on the ground. I guess he was able to like jump out of the way. He has a container of gasoline and like a lighter because he's going to burn the house down. So he takes out the cops. Astrid and the daughter are like, oh crap. They take off running to go hide. Jesse and him get in a scuffle. He ends up getting shot, which was pretty intense. He gets shot right through the chest, probably at least like through one of his lungs. It's pretty bad, and he's out. So he falls down, and so then he goes after the daughter, and it's pretty gruesome. Like, he shoots the wife and grabs the daughter, and he's got her like by her neck or whatever, and dragging her up the stairs, and well, first he drags her outside, and he comes back, and the wife's still alive, and he was gonna shoot Astrid in the head, but the gun was out, so he was like all confused, like, what? And like throws it down. And then he starts like lighting the house on fire. He drags the daughter back upstairs, and the wife's like, oh my gosh, I gotta wake up my husband. I think she got shot in the leg pretty bad, so she wasn't doing too well. And somehow, this is where it kind of got weird, because it's like, the husband's definitely like, if he's not dead, he's out pretty good. Somehow he gets like this like energizedness from like seeing his daughter in his head with like a fire, and he's like, what? And he wakes up and he has enough strength to like crawl out with the wife, and then you look up and the house is on fire on the 2nd level, and he ends up getting a ladder, even though he's like, it's in his chest, like, and he's able to climb up there, fight this guy. There's fire everywhere. There's no way this guy and the daughter is not asphyxiating from fire. So this part gets all kinds of weird, because then it's like, there's this whole big fire scene. He, beats the guy, I think, with the guitar, and stuff. And the guy burns up, and he's able to get Zoe and Jesse is able to get them both out. And I'm like, come on. Like, there's no way. They're not, like, coughing really or anything. And so then they get out, and then, like, the sun's starting to come up, and Jesse still kind of has this vision. So he's able to still get back up, run over to apparently this mound where Ray's been burying these kids is pretty close to the house. Runs over to that with one arm. He's digging up this hole, and he finds all the suitcases. And so basically it was like the children wanting to be set free and found. I don't know. So he like looks up to the sky, and then he like starts crying, and that's the end of the movie. It's not really possessing him, which there's some things I liked about that. Like, it was like, even if you didn't have the possession stuff and this was just a crazy guy going around thinking this stuff, it still would have been pretty good of a movie. But it's like, I like the fact that the dad didn't end up being the one going crazy and killing. Like, that's usually how it goes. And it was a decent ending. I don't know, it was okay. It was only 79 minutes. It still had some like great imagery and some scenes and stuff, but it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't really hit it completely with me. So if I were to rate it, I'm gonna go with butterflies. I will give it 5.5 butterflies out of 10. So I rate 2015 The Devil's Candy 5.5 butterflies out of 10. Give it a watch. It's not super long. It's got some good parts in it. That's what I give it. So thank you for listening to this mini movie review.